Everybody, welcome to another Around the Lens interview. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. As always, joining me this week is Gavin McMahon. He is the co-CEO of fassfoward, and he's going to tell us a little about what that is and himself. Gavin, welcome to the program.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me. Yeah, fast forward. We're a small company no one's heard of that works with big companies that people have heard of. We basically work in the area of change, helping companies work through transformation, and we do that through two things: leadership and storytelling. We've been around for about 25 years.
Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. Again, like you said, I've never heard of you, and I'm probably
Yeah.
sure many people haven't. But that's great that you've been around for so long. Talk to me about how you use storytelling to assist, larger organizations. So, for instance, I know you've worked with SpaceX, MasterCard, American Airlines, and others.
Yeah. I think uh, when you think about any business or any company, it's basically people. So if you think about a big organization, Fortune 50, they're typically, the older ones are 40, 50,000 people, and you've got to get 40 or 50,000 people roughly lined up in the right direction. That direction is your strategy. And the worst way to do that is to tell people what the strategy is and expect them to understand. And the best way to get people to act on that strategy is to translate it. And storytelling is the vehicle that we use to do that.
So, talk to me about how you use visual storytelling to both convey ideas to the companies that you work for and also to translate those ideas into, I guess, a finished product.
Yeah, I think visuals are huge and underused, certainly in business. I mean, not from your neck of the woods, but from mine, definitely. And where it is used, it's just PowerPoint. I mean, if companies have dialects, different companies speak in their own kind of language, but the lingua franca, the common language is PowerPoint, and so people will just put stuff on a slide it typically, it's like a typical PowerPoint slide. It's overloaded, it's a lot of bullets, there's not a lot of thinking. And oftentimes you want a message to break through. And I think you have to think about where visuals come in, and the visuals can kind of punctuate that point. I also think I think visuals are really interesting in that everything else we have is linear. Whereas if you have a picture, it becomes something people can see. And because we often deal in the area of change, we'll create story maps, and they're just literal illustrations of whatever the future is like, or whatever the story is going to be. And we literally and figuratively want people to see themselves in the picture, because if we think people can see themselves in that future, then they can move towards it a lot more easily. I can't hear you, Dave.
Sorry, absolutely. No, I agree. What have been some of the challenges that you've encountered in both building your business and also trying to, convey that aspect of visual storytelling? What kind of roadblocks do you come up with when you're trying to, get a message across?
Um, the one that I'll tell you, the one that's my pet peeve, which is once we've done the work, whatever we've done, it's, oh, I didn't know it would be that good, which tells me that we didn't really do a great job of explaining what we were going to do up front, which uh, considering what we do is we tell stories, and we figure out how to get message and change inside an organization. It's really annoying. So that the challenge, I think, is we work in what are typically considered these very soft areas in business. I want to translate the strategy. I want to lead this change in the organization. I want to shape the culture in some way. They're all things that senior leaders typically think about when something goes wrong. Culture gets blamed when something goes wrong. And so, but it's not like, how many people do I have employed, or am I building this big new technological infrastructure. So the challenge, I think, is mostly getting the listening space to make that to make those changes happen. And we really do that through relationships. It's most of our work comes through people we've known and worked with for years, and as they move around to different companies, we end up working with different people over and over again. I think at the end of the day, it's all relationship for us.
Right. No, I mean, relationships and building relationships is pretty critical toward having a strong connection, I think, not only to the organization, but also to the idea that you're trying to convey, I would imagine, right?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And it helps because we don't have as much explaining to do about what we're going to do. They'll typically trust us to. There's one quick story. We were in. I was at a big conference, a kind of internal conference for a company. It's a fairly big company, and we were talking about AI and how AI is going to change the work, how it's going to change the workforce.
Hmm.
And we were trying to get the top 150 leaders of the company to do this, and we created a story map, and the CHRO who had invited us in to do this was, I think, they knew that we were always that we've I mean, we worked with him for 15, 20 years, so we've always done a good job. He knew what he was going to get, but he didn't really know what he was going to get. And his introduction before we were on stage, we were doing this thing, showing this big visual. It literally was a big map of AI and how it was going to shape the workforce that they were unfolding and talking about. And as they engaged with this visual, the CHRO got, he you could see him getting more and more excited because he kind of knew it would work, but then as he saw people doing it, he got there, and that is always our challenge. I think is getting people um, to trust in the process, and it's difficult when it's a very soft thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about creating, visuals for companies.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in our discussions earlier, uh, offline, that your company has a specific house style in terms of how it kind of creates its illustrations. Can you talk to me about what that house style encompasses?
Yeah, the house style really grew from the way I will draw things on a flip chart. So the idea was, can we, if we doodle something on a flip chart, whether it's a person or a clock or a rocket ship, whatever it is that's explaining some kind of concept, can we carry that through? So the idea would be when people first, if you go to fassfoward.com right now, you'll see some of these illustrations in our articles. But the idea would be that carries all the way through the experience from beginning to end. So when you first come across us, you'll see it, and then actually all the way into the workshops, into the things we do. So that's how the house style really developed. And we have some really talented illustrators, graphic designers now who do a much better job than me. So by the time you get to the any of the consultants that are working there that who will draw something on a board, it's not quite as good as the house style, but it's of a family, I would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously, you use your craft and your skill to shift behaviors. Talk to me
Mm.
about that. Are you talking more about shifting behaviors within the company or creating content that shifts behaviors of the audiences those companies engage with?
It tends to be more internal. Our kind of sweet spot is, we think about change and transformation, and we think about the pressure that different companies are under and where things typically get difficult. One is translating strategy. So you have a strategy, yeah, whatever it is, it's figured out, but I can't translate that through the organization. So how do I get everyone to come, not just buy in, but see what their role is as part of that strategy. Another pressure point is lifting teams. I've got a team that's been working in a certain way. I need to get them working in a different way. How do I do that? Shaping culture. It's all those different things that we end up doing over and over again. And again, I think the 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 visual side of it is how do I get people to see themselves in the picture? In fact, we we think about messaging. You know, you're a filmmaker, so
Right.
I think we borrow a lot of ideas about storytelling from people that do it professionally. So if I look at advertising, we've worked with advertising and marketing companies. If I look at filmmakers, if I look at novelists, I think anyone that has a message that does this really well has a lot of specialization. And so the specialization in the film industry where you have, people that do words really well, they're the screenwriters. People that say the words really well, they're the actors and actresses. People that can compose the pictures are the cinematographers and the set designers and the set dressers. There are a lot of specializations for words and pictures, and then the structure, the direction, the editing, the kind of overall genre of the movie. So I look at the specializations in your part of the world, and I think about them as words, structure, and pictures. And that's a very simple formula for us to think about how are we messaging, because when words, structure, and pictures are balanced together and
Right.
to create a cohesive message, they work really well. But you've
Sure.
seen a movie with no plot. So you've got good words and you've got good pictures, but no structure. It's not a great movie. So we're always thinking about that, and honestly, that simple concept translates down to PowerPoint slides because you have a lot of words and some pictures, but no structure. Well, that's not really a good message for your strategy. If you have a lot of structure and some words, but no pictures, people are not going to engage in that. So it's for us, it's all about creating that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to get to your point about an unstructured film, there was actually a film at Tribeca, the film festival I went to, where it was unique in that they filmed it over the course of 6 days, but they had no structure or they had no like script. So they were doing everything improvised and they
Mm.
kind of had a structure, but like even then, they kind of allowed the actors to choose where they wanted to go. And while the concept was intriguing, the actual finished product was very boring because it was so scattershot in terms of like what is the story, and so yeah, I can totally understand and align with what you're talking about there. Talk to me about the AI of it all, right? Because
Mm.
obviously, there's no conversation that can be had nowadays that doesn't encompass AI in some form or fashion. So, you talk about the fact that you use illustrations. Do you find that AI has been a net positive, a negative, not affected your company? Do you find that your clients are like maybe demanding it or not demanding it? Perhaps they're saying like, "Hey, we don't want any of those. Don't give us no AI illustrations, okay? We want human made stuff."
So I think there's a lot to say about this. I think first of all, AI is affecting everything, and if you don't think about how it affects you and your work, that's a mistake.
Right.
I think AI is constantly changing. So if you're an AI expert today and you go to sleep for 6 months, you will not be an AI expert in 6 months' time.
Right.
Pace of change is so huge. I think companies. I think I think right now the story. First of all, when the open AIs and the Anthropics came out and told the story of AI, there was a they were scaremongering, I think, a lot uh, about what AI was going to do. And AI is, generative AI is fantastic in what it can do today, but it can only do so much. And I think as humans, we think about things in what I would call job-shaped objects. And a job-shaped object is a human doing a certain task that has a set of skills and experiences. And there is no one-for-one replacement of AI with human. What is really going on is, I think, right now with the current state of AI, there's a AI can make what you do, it can help you do what you do faster. I do not use the word better because I think if you're a creative person, um, AI can help you generate that creativity so much faster. It can't do the last mile really well because it looks like AI. And I think a simple way to think about it would be if you produce C minus work, it will help you produce C minus work at scale uh, really quickly. If you produce A plus work, it will do the same thing. So I still think the onus is on people to be really creative, to be really good at whatever it is they do, whether it's coding, whether it's cinematography, it doesn't really matter. Be really good at that and think about how AI can help you. Because if you're really kind of average at it, AI will help you be average. That's all.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about this book, Story Business, that you wrote. What is that all about?
Well, yes, the story business is hopefully the ideas in the two words, story and business. It's really the intersection of the two. It's really I think there's a couple of big hopefully, I think, of big ideas in the book. The first is it's never the best idea that wins, it's the best packaged idea. And I think growing up, I'm originally an engineer. So growing up as an engineer and my first jobs, you kind of live in this world where you think everything is black and white and everything is a meritocracy, and it's just not true. It really is not the best idea, it's the best packaged idea. Offline before we were having a little bit of a chat about TV shows and what helps them break through. A lot of it is the packaging of the TV show. It's not necessarily the world's best TV show.
Mhm.
So that's one idea that's in the book. Another is how do ideas travel? Because an idea on its own without a story is a little bit like a chicken on its own without an egg. You need both things, and where the idea starts and the story starts is really difficult. Um, and then from there, it's really about how storytelling can be applied everywhere, not just marketing and not just branding. So I have six genres in the book. Value storytelling, which is how do we create a sense of worth around what we do? Uh, Product storytelling, how do we use storytelling to build better product, whatever it is we're building? Brand storytelling, which is for me is fascinating because I think there's a few marketers in business have stepped into the idea of world building by accident, which again is another thing borrowed from novels and movies and science fiction. But certain companies do world building really well, where they can kind of create fandom. So it world building and brand storytelling is another one. And then I go into sales storytelling, leadership storytelling, and culture storytelling. So for me, these are all genres of storytelling inside a story business, and that's really what the book is about.
Okay, excellent. That's great. What are some things that are on the horizon for your company that you're looking to either explore or delve into, maybe that are new for the company, or new clients that you might be able to talk about or talk
Well,
towards,
for
perhaps
us,
their challenges?
yeah, for us, I mean, we pretty much stick with our clients. We have a small number of clients, and we work with them for a while. Most, I would think for the next 5 years, all our work is going to be driven by AI, not so much the
Mm,
technology, but it's going to be driven by the change and how does the work change? How does
mm,
the workforce change? How
yeah.
do I organize my business around that? How do I create value through that? I think that's one of the things about AI that people, if you're thinking about using AI right now, you should not be thinking about it as just how do I do this faster or better. You should think about the better, which is basically how do I create more value? And I think that's the thing that's really interesting. That is an opportunity for people. But I think most of our work is going to be that.
All right, awesome. Um, you have a pretty big team of folks here that are part of the company. Can you talk to me a little bit about how they interact with one another and how they kind of attack a particular client's needs?
Yeah, we basically we have frontline what we call delivery people who are expert facilitators, who are expert consultants, coaches, and we will work with the client to really understand what their end business goal is, and then there'll be a team attached to each client, and we'll work on projects inside that. And so those projects could be coaching senior executives. It could be helping create events. It could be helping create leadership programs for HR. Whatever. Again, we're always kind of trying to move them towards help them change their business or help them transform their business in the way that they're doing it. And we're doing it over and over again through leadership and storytelling. So we have a big bucket of intellectual property, IP, um, which are really just tools and ways of thinking and frameworks and methods that really help people move, change behavior, change teams. So that's what we constantly are using over and over again.
Nice, nice. I also see here that you have a lot of articles that you publish that go
Mm.
into various aspects of your organization and present here a lot of kind of editorial opinion pieces. Um, like how do these articles fit into your overall what you're trying to achieve as a business, right? So like what are you trying to do through the publication of these stories?
Well, if you read any of the articles, and they tend to get published first on LinkedIn and then end up on the fassfoward.com site, they usually start as a conversation with a client and about a particular client problem. And by the time they end up as an article, they're more a thought piece about that particular problem with the client's name removed, but it's the thinking. So we use them as a way. Actually, we try and kill two birds with one stone. We use them to help get our thinking out there. That's the article format, but it also helps us. We tend to do the writing while we're doing the work, so we're thinking through the problem. And to me, writing adds rigor to your thinking. If you can get it down on paper, if you can, but actually, this is another area where writing and visuals come along, the illustration. It's one thing. It's I had an old college professor tell me this. It's one thing to say it and think it. It's another thing to write it down. It adds a whole layer of rigor. What I found is actually not just writing it down, but then thinking about the visual that goes with that adds an even deeper layer of rigor. So we use the articles in that way is to really help us develop our thinking, but also as a way of attracting and helping people understand what we do. And then there is a third use, which because they're written as a general case, they tend to get used as follow-ups for various work that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking here at one story called Innovation Engines, How to Drive
Mm.
Innovation with Impact. And I see a lot of illustrations. Is this your house style that you're talking about? These
Yeah.
illustrations?
Yeah, it is. It's
Okay.
very kind of black and white with a few blemishes of color. I don't know how I could describe it. We just call it hand drawn. It's not
No,
it's
yeah. I mean,
not
it's
not
very
super
simplistic.
descriptive.
It's simplistic, but it's not like it's easy to understand. It's a positive. That's how simplistic it is. Like you quickly can look at the image and digest what it's trying to convey without too
Yeah.
much, difficulty in processing it. So I think that's really interesting. Obviously, besides illustration, have you all considered using anything like photography or videography to try to convey, ideas to your clients?
We have, but for us, that's one of the areas I think, especially when we first started, because but the I think 10, 15 years ago, the cost of photography was so high,
Mm,
and you could never the difference between for us. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming that there's a process, but if we have an idea, like if you think about the engines of innovation, how do you it's much easier for us to conceptualize what these things look like and just draw them than it is to take a photograph of something. Having said that, there are occasionally photographs that I think are so powerful, and then we go down the licensing path of what that is. But I don't think we've ever really commissioned photography, just because it's so hard to go from idea to what that concept would look like to then know the photography. Of course, AI changes all that, but then I think at the other end of it, you get something that kind of looks a little bit odd because it's not really a proper photograph.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the same thing with video, right? If you're going to be using AI for video too, it's like you're kind of going into a minefield there. And, what I've noticed when I see videos that are either influenced or include AI elements, I completely get turned off towards the message that that video is trying to convey because all I can think about is this is AI. You know, it's not
I
human
think,
created.
yeah, I think the ones that really lean into it, um, are and the creativity isn't in the video, but it's in the dialogue or something like that. They are like, I don't know if you've seen the Stormtrooper ones, and I have no idea whether Disney thinks that's a good idea or a bad idea, but they're kind of the two really bad stormtroopers that talk to each other and are always messing up on their Star Wars type missions. Those kind of lean into the AI, and I think the creativity is more in the dialogue and the voice acting than the AI pictures.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's difficult to find a. I haven't seen a use case of AI video that's really great yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very limited in what you can do with AI video in terms of just the feasibility and also the length of time that you can potentially generate anything for.
Yeah.
So, and there's also a lot of consistency issues between like shots. So, if you're trying to create like a sequence of shots, it can be sometimes difficult to maintain that consistency, although a lot of the models are getting better and better at it. So, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, in terms of using it in any sort of messaging, I have seen some people who have done really interesting things with it, um, like fake testimonial type videos about like a potential, I don't know, drug or something. And I'm like, that's interesting from a concept perspective. But again, like to actually use that in the real world, I don't think there's going to be a place for it, at least not yet. And, I
I
could
think
see
when you lean
maybe
in,
like some
yeah,
stock footage replacement, but that's about it.
yeah. I think when you lean into the idea of like it is kind of fake and it is AI, obviously AI, then it it has that's the only place I've seen it be successful. Um, I think everywhere else where you're trying to make it look like it was a properly done thing,
Right.
it definitely is not working yet. And I wasn't didn't OpenAI open up Sora and then close down? Didn't they just close it down a few months ago
They
because it
did.
wasn't
Yeah.
working for them? Yeah,
Too expensive to run.
yeah, yeah. I think I think AI, I don't know. There's a huge amount of potential. It's just
Sure.
figuring out what and where to use it,
Right.
where it really gets useful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the rub, right? When are we going to use it? If we use it, how do we use it? I can see it as being a tool for like ideation, maybe, but I don't want ever it to be something where I'm relying on its generations for, client facing work.
Yeah, and there's also a movement for I, I I don't know if this is the right word, but kind of more artisanal and human created things. That's been that even pre-AI, you know, there was certainly a movement in the food industry for, locally produced honey or all of that kind of stuff. So I think you'll start to see more of that where there's a premium for that kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
it's probably going to end up in the same way that media has ended up, where there's a big fragmentation. People still read newspapers on actual printed paper. People listen to radio. People also listen to podcasts. People also, consume news on their mobile device. They also watch it on TV. They also watch on YouTube. It just gets more and more fragmented. I think we're going to see that AI is just going to layer into lots of different fragments of how we produce and consume media.
yeah, I agree. It's kind of inevitable. Um, I see here on your list of clients that you worked for SpaceX.
Mm.
Just kind of like as a side note, what do you think the fact that SpaceX is now a IPO? It's not an IPO. It's a company on the stock exchange, and it's
Yeah.
yielded now the first trillionaire in history.
Well, SpaceX is a story stock, right? It's so it if you look at the numbers and you took Elon Musk out of the equation and you just said, is it making money and what's the multiple and whatever it is that financial people do when they think about is it worth it, it wouldn't be worth it. But it is worth things are worth whatever the market says they're worth,
Yeah,
and the question is what moves the market, and what moves the market is not just the numbers but the story around the numbers, and more CEOs are talking about, or they're trying to talk about what their narrative, what their story is. So the biggest IPO is a story. But it's also the story of Elon. I mean, basically, if you're buying SpaceX stock, you're betting on Elon Musk because he controls the company. And if you buy into the fact that he is a genius and he has an understanding for how to make money and how to create the future, then you would buy that stock. It's the
right,
story you're buying into. Nvidia is the most valuable company on earth. The story you're buying into is AI is a gold rush, and the people that make the money in the gold rush are the people that sell the picks and shovels. That's Nvidia. So it's about understanding the story you live in. In the book, I actually talk about this in value storytelling. It's the narrative constellation of stories that you live in, and understanding where you sit in that, and then kind of playing into that. SpaceX is a classic example of doing that. And it's also why, by the way, look at why every billionaire, or why did Elon Musk buy X? Why did Jeff Bezos buy the Washington Post? Why did the Ellisons buy all the media companies they're buying? Because they're understanding that there's a connection between how much money they can make and the stories and the narratives that they can shift.
right. No, absolutely. Okay, well, I believe we're near the end of our time together. Before we say goodbye, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, this has been a great, interesting conversation. I actually have a question for you.
Yeah,
From
please.
your point of view, we talked about AI. Where do you see it going? What do you think it's gonna like? Because you think about things from a visual lens, if pardon the
Sure.
pun. Um, how's AI going to change your world?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's obviously the big $20 million question, right? And so I would say right now it's a tool, and it's a tool just like Photoshop is a tool in terms of it assists with us, getting to a creative endpoint. I don't think it should be used in a sort of generative manner to replace the artist, but I do see it as sort of an assistant. And when it comes to things like AI audio correction and some kind of AI tools that can help with captioning, right? Um, I think there's a lot of potential there. It's something that, as long as it's used alongside the creator, as opposed to in replacement of the creator, then it can be potentially very valuable. Until then, though, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to see that differentiation and aren't going to care and just want the finished product. But, for me personally, I use AI as sort of a second set of eyes, if you will. So it
Mm.
helps me with my writing. It helps me, with ideation. It helps with reviewing something I've created and just making sure that, hey, does this sound right? Did I have any mistakes in it? Can I make this sound better? So I
Yeah,
never use AI as like the starting point. I only use AI as sort of the, again, another person in the room who
yeah,
happens to know everything. For instance, if I'm, writing a script, maybe I'll have AI look at the script and tell me like, can this be better? And maybe give me
yeah,
some suggestions because guess what? AI has read every script ever, written,
yeah,
in theory, right? So it should know how to write a movie script in theory.
yeah,
But, again, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, I've got an idea for a film, generate me a full script. One, it can't do that. I've tried it. And two, I
yeah,
wouldn't want what it would create because I don't think it would have heart. A friend of mine was showing me a book cover that he created that used AI. And on the surface, like it looks pretty, it looks professional if you don't look at it for longer than a few seconds and dig into it. But once you start kind of analyzing it and thinking about what is on, this graphic, It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. It doesn't have any sort of heart to it. And it's something that where, I would never, for instance, I'm putting together the last pieces of my feature film. I would never like ask AI to generate a poster for me because
Um,
if I'm a, viewer and I see that someone has created a poster with AI, I'm going to think, oh man, what else did they make with AI for this film, right?
yeah.
And it's the same thing with the book. I said, maybe you can put out this AI book cover, but how are people going to interpret that? Are they going to now think that your book was written by AI, right? And do you want people to think that? You know, if you put all your, time, effort, and energy to write a book, and you're not even going to go through the last steps to make, the cover human
Yeah.
generated, then what was the point of any of that? So,
I think that's a really good point because I think, if people think it's made by AI, then the next thought is that's really cheap. Then the next thought after that is I'm not going to pay a lot for that, or I want that for free. So if you're just producing stuff with AI, you're in a race to the bottom. And I love your comment about heart because I think, in robotics, have you heard this term of the uncanny valley?
oh yeah, yeah, very
Yeah.
familiar with
So
that.
you kind of got this uncanny valley with AI produced visuals and also maybe writing, but it's easier to see in the visuals where it's kind of it's good, but it's not quite right, and there's something off about it, and you can't see it. And I think that's your heart thing. I think what we've got to do, it's got to be the back and forth between people and AI that creates something better. And that's where, we're thinking about value. When we work with companies where we're helping them rethink their workflow, so what their work is, one of the questions we ask is which parts of the work are fun to do and which parts of the work are boring to do? Because the boring stuff, that maybe you should give that to AI because it's boring.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I mean, there is definitely a case for that for sure. And, again, I think as long as it works alongside the creative and doesn't replace them, then, and I was talking to a filmmaker who used AI and
Mm,
to make his film, and when I found out it was AI, which I found out while watching, I was completely just turned off towards anything that the film was trying to achieve because I just thought this is just AI slop, I don't, want to see this. But, when I talked to the director himself, he was like, no, I'm trying to use AI ethically, and it's meant to try to act as sort of a way to create in between frames, like you create sort of your storyboard and then you use AI to fill out the rest. But again, from the novice sort of layman or the average viewer, they're not going to know, right? They're going to see AI and they're going to think, okay, they just entered a prompt, into uh,
yeah.
a tool, and this is what outputted, And so, I think again, it's still very much like a area you have to be, I would say, have some wariness into going into because you know the message that he was trying to get across was his film was completely lost on me because I was just overwhelmed by the fact that there was AI. That took dominance. And had they just made something that, even if it wasn't as good, right? Because they were trying to go for this Pixar art style, right? Which was
Yeah.
great, but that's very hard to do well. And maybe if they'd gone something a little bit less, let's say cheaper, or I would say less, robust, but it would still had the heart of what it was trying to convey. I think that would have been a stronger overall versus necessarily trying to, shoehorn in AI. But
Yeah.
it's going to be something to look out for sure.
I wonder, when you say, when you talk about that movie, what pops up in my head are a bunch of PowerPoint slides that have been made by Claude or something.
Right.
And I wonder whether this reaction where you have this reaction to, oh, it's AI, therefore it's AI slop. I actually wonder what the order is because I wonder if and I don't know, but I wonder if the order, like if, let's say you were really engrossed in the movie and the story that it was telling,
Yeah,
so that you didn't notice it was produced by AI,
sure.
then you would never notice and you'd be fine because you were getting value from that. If for me with the PowerPoint slides, if I was reading the PowerPoint slides and listening to the presentation and thinking this is really smart, this is good, we should definitely do this, then
Yeah.
I wouldn't think about it as AI slot. I think I wonder if it's just the quality of the thing isn't good enough,
Right.
and therefore, and then we get to the, oh, it must be AI, and therefore, oh, it's AI slop, and why are you wasting my time? I wonder
Yeah.
if that's the order, and I also wonder how this is what we're thinking now in 2026. I wonder how long we're going to stay with this thought about AI slop, or what it's going to be when we get to 2027, when we're just kind of used to all these things. What's that going to be? How are we going to think about it then? I don't know.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. When I was telling him, it's like when what you can create with AI is indistinguishable from something like Toy Story 5, right? A human created product, then it probably won't matter because the only reason I was turned off by his video was once the structure started to fall apart and I could see the, man behind the curtain, so to speak. And for instance, when I first saw the video, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool. It's like a Pixar style animated film. That's really neat." And then I was watching it longer, and I noticed the scenes were very short, like only like a few seconds long, if that, in terms of the cuts. And I was like, "Oh, that's these are some pretty short scenes." And then they eventually get to kind of like a wide shot of a city street, and there's supposed to be text on the side of a building, like on a marquee, and it's you can't read it, or it's like
Mm.
it's all kind of like it's undulating, if you will.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, "Oh no, it's AI." And then I was like, I didn't care anymore. And plus, also the music created for it was AI, and it was just such this like generic
Yeah.
bop that had some very odd lyrics associated with it. And I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
So once you can kind of get past that or that uncanny valley, if you will, and it doesn't look or sound anything different than what you would see, from a mainstream company, then I'd say, okay, now this is kind of the point where you were going to see a divide between the creators who use AI extensively to create and the creators who shun AI as sort of a tool that is, as some of my friends call it, a plagiarism machine, right? Because it
Yeah.
doesn't create new ideas, it just takes ideas and sort of averages them out. So, but I think you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna have kids raised on this stuff, right? Generation beta or whatever is after alpha. They're gonna be raised on AI products. It's already kind of found its way into the mass market, if you will. I think there's like 70% of the content on the internet is AI nowadays, or something crazy like that, or
Mm.
it's creating all kinds of new stuff. And so it's just going to intermingle to the point where either people are going to be too exhausted to try to differentiate from it, because it's going to be so good, or people aren't going to care and they're just looking for content to help them, you know, ignore or pass along the day. And even still, like I follow a bunch of subreddits that talk about AI, and there's one that's called like, "Is this AI?" And the videos, it's getting harder and harder to tell when something is AI, especially for short clips. It's gotten, very good at creating, short
Yeah.
clips. I'd say the
But
biggest tell in AI is nowadays is it looks too good.
but I wonder if that's we're almost mixing. So let me give you a counter argument. We're almost mixing two things: the is it AI and can we tell, and the somehow I was taken out of the story, or somehow I don't buy into that idea.
Right.
For me, it's the idea. For you, it's the story. Um, like go back 10 years. And so if you think about movies that were made or TV shows or whatever from
Sure.
2000, anything before 2010, which definitely can't be AI,
Right.
what was a really bad movie that you just didn't want to watch? I mean, I can name a couple. I thought I can't, like I remember going to see um was it the second 300 movie? There's the 300, right, the Spartan movie, and then the one after that, which was kind of very cinematic and great, but it wasn't. If I if I was the type of person that would walk out of the cinema, I would have walked out. Um, like, is that really going to be the test? Is it just going to be the quality of whatever you produce? It doesn't matter how you get there. It's the quality of what you make, and is it
Sure.
entertaining? Is it
Yeah, no,
useful? Is it
I
informative?
I believe, in the next 10 years, we're going to start seeing content that is generated by AI, that is entertaining, that is competently put together, and that we probably will, you'll have people who enjoy it, right? Um, I think we're very close to that point in terms of overcoming the challenges that prevent that. I mean, there's somebody who made a AI movie and showed it not at the Cannes Film Festival, but in Cannes the city, and I saw a trailer for it, and it looks kind of like any sort of generic blockbuster. And I think that's what AI will do. It'll create, you won't be able to distinguish between something that's AI generated and something that's human generated, except for the fact that you'll know watching it that there's inherently something missing from that.
Mm,
And, again, it's that heart, it's that story, it's that something that, gives it the distinctive characteristics of a human generated piece of content, that sort of imperfection, if you will. Um,
yeah.
and so, you know, but there may not be people who care. I believe, we're going to have a point where you'll have a device similar to like an Amazon Prime or a Roku or something, or you stick to your computer or your TV, and it's just like an AI box, and it's going to be maybe a standalone box or maybe an internet connected box, and you choose the content you want to watch and it generates it for you. You say, I want to watch a movie about, let's say an action movie with dinosaurs, and it's going to generate that for you in seconds. And that's going to be the future of entertainment. If you can, go to a unlimited creation box, why would you ever bother with, the Netflixes or, the Tubies? And, again, I think there are people who are going to be like, well, I want to watch content made by people. Sure. There's also people who like to buy newspapers. There's people still
Yeah.
who like to use rotary phones. And there's still people who like to, listen to audio on CDs or tapes or buy
Yeah.
DVDs, right? So there'll always be a market and audience for traditional. But I think, there might be people who are just looking to, again, escape from reality. And if it's, if it's made by
I
AI,
think
it's good enough, they'll watch it.
you should rush down to the patent office and get that one in. I think that could be that could make you billions.
I think so as well. Yeah, I just got to figure out how to make it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
technology just isn't there yet. Like I've got a high-end graphics card on my computer, and I can squeeze out maybe, 10 seconds of video generated locally after about 30 minutes. So I think it's
It's a
still
bit
got a
away.
ways to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should have this conversation again in another year and see if our opinions have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Maybe I'll have
Yeah.
it. You have on with my fellow co-host because he is adamant against AI in all its forms, and I know why, and I agree on many of his points.
My daughter is exactly the same.
She's against
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
Good.
You uses
There's hope still yet.
won't use Google to search because she doesn't want AI powered search. She's using a different search engine. I forget which, but all stuff like that.
Well, I mean,
So
the good thing about, Google's AI search is at least you can bypass it, right? It tries to present it upfront. Um, but yeah, I
yeah,
mean, if you look at, the search of any Google page, it's kind of like almost, it's not even a search engine page anymore. It's basically like a
yeah,
newspaper.
yeah,
And
you're right.
so, there's ways to get to kind of like the classic view of Google, but still, it's like most people won't find that or care. They'll just use Google the way Google was created.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, awesome.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much, Gavin, for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure
That was
talking to
good fun.
you about this aspect of storytelling. Tell people where they can find out more about you or your work.
Sure. If you go to, you can find Story Business, the book, on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can also go to the website story-business.com, and you can find Fast Forward at fassfoward.com, fassfoward.com.
Awesome. All right, Gavin. Well, thank you again so much. Have a great rest of the week. And I will talk to you on the next one. For Gavin McMahon, I'm David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens Interviews, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.
See you. Bye.